What if your kids wrote you a letter and it started with the words, the great, good, bad, and ugly of dad? See, that was exactly what happened to me, and it shook me to my core, but also awakened me. That was the day that my sons told me the truth about me, and it changed everything. And yet it gave me something I didn't even know was missing. It gave me clarity, trust, and a new kind of connection with my sons. See, on the other side of this, it gave me things I didn't even think were possible, like daily connection, weekly connection with my sons. My sons invited me to events. My son invited me to his baptism, and then including me in their lives, talking to me about their lives. See, this is a story about how I used vulnerability to unlock the truth and how you can do the same for you before it's kind of too late in a relationship. The power of vulnerability, getting clarity and truth and connection through this power of vulnerability. See, I spent over 20 years being a dad, a coach, a Marine, a police officer, trying to be a good husband, trying to be a good dad. See, I thought I was doing everything right. I showed up, I provided, I protected, at least I thought I did. You see, the thing, there's a couple of statistics here, like 63% of men rarely or never talk about their emotions with their father. This comes from the American Psychological Association in 2023. 63% of men rarely or never talk about their emotions with their father. And this lack of emotional transparency, it can lead to generational disconnection and emotional unpredictability within the families. Another one from the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry. Children who experience inconsistent parental behavior are twice as likely to struggle with anxiety, emotional regulation, and trust issues. So if children are experiencing inconsistent parental behavior, they're twice as likely to experience anxiety, emotional regulation, and trust issues. Emotional inconsistency and never knowing which parent you're getting can be more damaging than temporary absence. And this hit me, right? I mean, so even though I thought I was doing right, even though I thought I was protecting and providing, I found myself in the pit. See, nothing was working in my life. I was working midnights. My financial debt was off the charts. My sons were in travel lacrosse. We were living off a single income, and my debt was off the charts to provide, right, for the family. Our time management, we were just pouring ourselves into sports. I was working midnights. I was coaching. So there was very limited time. There was no margin in time, no margin in money. My marriage was failing. My relationship was failing. Nothing was working. And I was disconnected from my sons over this time. So over this time period, I sought out coaching. I sought out mentoring. I sought to transform my life. I knew that in God's word, it said, do not conform to the world, but transform by renewing of your mind. And I sought out coaches and I sought out personal development that would transform my mind. And probably over a decade's worth of time, I finally come to this moment with my sons. And they're adult sons. I did what most men will probably never do. I got vulnerable with my sons. I got open and vulnerable with my sons. And I asked them this question. They were adults. We had gone through a journey in life, almost a decade and a half of going from youth sports. So to give you perspective, they started with Pee Wee football and U9 lacrosse and moved all the way through youth sports and high school sports to collegiate lacrosse. And after all that's done, I asked them, I get vulnerable and I asked them, how did dad show up? I wanted to know how I actually showed up in their lives, not from my perception, but what did they actually experience? How did they experience me as a dad? How did they experience me as a sports dad? How did they experience me as a dad coach? How did they experience me as a father in general? How did they experience me as a husband to their mother? Like, what did they actually experience? Now, I didn't think they were going to do this. One of my sons had gone through some coaching, online experience with me. So he was used to getting vulnerable and sharing. But I still didn't think they were going to do this exercise in vulnerability. But then, probably about a week later, I did get a letter. I got a 2-page letter titled, The Great, Good, Bad, and Ugly of Dad. I got this letter, and it was a letter that had like bullet points. There weren't paragraphs, but each one of these bullet points could have been a paragraph, could have been a chapter in a book based on what they were talking about. And again, it was a very lengthy, it went through all kinds of things. It went through things like they wish we would have vacationed more than focus on the sports as much. They wish we would have talked about other things like life lessons instead of just talking about the sport all the time. But the hardest thing that I had to read was that they didn't know what version of dad would walk through the door. They didn't know what version of dad would show up on the sidelines or on the field. Was it the happy dad, the calm dad, or was it the angry, irritable dad, the one that would yell from the sidelines? And when I read that and I heard that, I mean, that was brutal to hear, but that was the moment that changed everything for me. See, I had to read this letter. I had to hear their feelings with complete awareness, complete presence. I had to hold space for them and all those emotions and all that truth without doing a couple things, the normal things that most of us want to do. We want to defend, we want to justify, we want to try to convince, we want to make excuses. And I had some excuses. I've been on the job. I've been shot in the line of duty. I've been through a lot of trauma. I've seen a lot of trauma on the job. I had some excuses, but that wouldn't have meant anything to them in that moment. I had to hold complete space, no justifying, no defending, and be fully present to their emotions. And see, what I learned in these moments, is the power of vulnerability. The power of vulnerability. I learned that vulnerability is a superpower. It's not weakness. See, most men think that emotion is weak. We're taught that, like, boys don't cry. And I did too. I felt that as well until I saw my son's courage in telling the truth. Tell me how they experienced me truthfully. And this vulnerability actually built trust, especially with those that we lead and love. Like, my sons have opened up to me more. We talk more. They share their struggles with me more. My one son, again, he invited me to his baptism because that was super important. My other son is inviting me to his graduation from the fire department, the fire academy. So again, vulnerability is a superpower. You can't lead what you won't look at. You can't lead if you won't look at it. If you don't stand in truth, if your 1020, your location is not grounded in truth, you won't see the truth. I had to look at the uncomfortable truth of what my sons experienced, how I had shown up, so that we could move to that clarity, move to that connection. See, leadership begins with self-inquiry. I always used to say, like, with young athletes, like, you can be a champion or a complainer or a winner or a whiner. And I also said too that you have to check yourself first. You have to look at yourself in the mirror first. And the mirror doesn't lie. And your loved ones are the mirror. Like, your spouse, your partner, they're a mirror to who you are. So being able to hold space for when they tell you what they're feeling, particularly about you, that's a superpower. Presence is more valuable than performance. See, I was doing all the right things. I was providing, but was I really protecting their heart? Was I really protecting their spirit? Yeah, I was working hard. I was paying the bills. They never went wanting. I was coaching, showing up, but my presence was unpredictable. They didn't know who was going to show up. Great dad, good dad, bad dad, or ugly dad. They had no idea who was going to show up. Happy, angry, irritated, cool. They had no idea. They never knew which dad they were getting. And see, consistency prevented a lot of accomplishment. But with consistent reps and consistent action and truth, you can get to that clarity. You can get to connection. If you're in a relationship with a significant other, your spouse, consistency in reps, consistency in love, in truth, that leads to intimacy. That leads to all the hormones in our life that we talk about that lead to bonding and trust and emotional safety, all those things. If we're consistent in our actions and consistent in our presence, how we show up, it leads to clarity, connection in our relationships. See, perception is reality for them. I could defend, I could try to justify, I could provide excuses, but they didn't care that I was a police officer, that I was a former Marine, that I had been shot in the line of duty, that didn't mean anything to them when they're being yelled at from the sideline. Or they're being constantly talking about their performance, and they start equating their identity to their performance. They started identifying love with performance, when that's never what I intended. I love my children no matter what. But the way I was perceived is that it was their sports performance, their performance on the field, that equated to love. And I showed up that way. Never intended to. So to be able to hold space for them and how they experience that reality was important. Again, perception was reality for them. It didn't matter what I intended. What mattered was how they felt through all those experiences. And the stories I told about myself about being a provider, it didn't match their experiences of being fathered, being parented. I'm diving into a series of my podcast centered around this book called The Youth Truth by one of my mentors, Andrew Simpson. And his whole perspective has changed my reality about how I show up as a father, how we show up in love, as opposed to all the illusions around the crazy youth sports world. I mean, the title of the book is called The Youth Truth, Coaching and Parenting in Today's Crazy Sports World. And it is crazy. I have friends right now that are in this sports world, and it's crazy. And I look back, and again, this one really hurts me that I got sucked into that crazy sports world instead of fathering my sons, instead of fathering them the correct way. Fortunately, I've learned that integrity is a key thing. Integrity is being who we say we are. So if we say we are men, be men. If we say we are fathers, be fathers. And what does it actually mean? Maybe we have to study. Maybe we have to do research. Maybe we have to follow great examples of how we should show up as fathers, because that's what really matters to our children. Another lesson I learned in this experience through vulnerability was that connection requires truth, not perfection. My sons didn't require me to be perfect, but they wanted me to be present, and they wanted the truth. They wanted to be able to speak the truth. So connection requires truth. I didn't need to be a perfect dad, but I needed to be an honest one. That moment of brutal honesty, it awakened me. It broke something in me, but it also awakened me, and it built something between us. It built something between my sons. So here are some action steps in vulnerability that can lead you to clarity and trust and truth. The first place to start is do the inquiry. Step into that space. We've talked about it previously. Ask your 1020, where are you? 1020 is code for your location. So in terms of police code, ask, where are you? What is your location? What is your 1020? In other words, your location. Do the inquiry with your loved ones. Ask your kids, your spouse, your team, have I shown up in your life? Where can I serve you better? Create space for truth without defensiveness. I mean, this would be a courageous moment in the inquiry to go up to your spouse today, go up to your children today and go, how have I been showing up in your life? How have I been showing up? As a man, how have I been showing up as a husband? How have I been showing up as a father? How have I been showing up in your life? Am I serving you the way that you need? And then receive without retaliating. When they speak, listen, don't justify, don't argue. Hold complete space for them. Receive the message, let it sink in. The truth might hurt, but it's the beginning of healing. It's the beginning of clarity and connection. The next step is to own what's yours. Number 3 is to own what's yours. Say the words, I get it, I hear you, I understand, I didn't know that, I see it, and I'm sorry. And then decide, who do you want to be for them? I'm going forward, I'm going to be a man of integrity. I'm going to be a father of integrity in action for you. I'm going to be a man of clarity and connection and integrity. Define who you're going to be for them going forward. Again, ownership unlocks that transformation. Create a safe pattern. Number 4, create a safe pattern. Be the same man at home, on the field, at work, and in private. Let your presence be consistent. Let your presence be an emotionally safe place for them, not a guessing game. It's really important in relationships with the opposite sex and the significant other, your spouse, right? Be that emotional safety. And I have failed there at times. But be consistently safe. Be consistently present. Be an emotional safe space for them. Schedule honest conversations. Be open and vulnerable to have those honest, hard conversations. Once isn't enough. Make room for regular feedback throughout a week, maybe once a week. How am I showing up? Is there anywhere I can serve you better? Build a rhythm of truth in your home. Finally, number 6, be the version of you they can trust. That's integrity. Be who you say you are. Your titles don't matter. Your titles at work, your achievements at work and life, they don't matter. But be a dad, be a leader, be a coach, be a husband at home. What matters, though, is that you are somebody they can trust every time you walk through the door. Every time you show up, they can trust that your clarity, that your connection, that your peace, that your love, that your happiness, that your kindness, your gentleness, that you're standing in truth. Be the version of you that they can trust. So that's the key question. When you are defining that, ask somebody, be courageous. Be courageous today and ask your loved ones, how am I showing up? And just be ready for the answer. Now, if you're finding yourself in that space where you want that clarity and connection, and you want to create clarity, connection through vulnerability, and you'd like somebody, a fellow Pathfinder, to walk alongside you with that, reach out to me. Like, subscribe, reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at Raw Talent Mindset or rawtalent.strongside. You can find me on Facebook at Dave Talent. Again, reach out, like, subscribe. Let's see where we can go to get you clarity and connection in the areas of your life that are important to you, and especially with your loved ones.